Make a pen without a lathe. I was kicking around at the hardware store and I found this piece of copper tubing. It's called an air chamber and it's shaped suspiciously like everyone's favorite permanent marker, the Sharpie, so it seemed like a natural fit. I used a tubing cutter to shorten the air chamber to the right length to match up with the body of the marker. You can see here, it's a pretty good fit. I nipped off the pin clip on the lid, then marked the scrap piece of that pipe to the right length. If you've never used a tubing cutter like this, you just spin it around the pipe, tighten it up a little bit, spin it some more until the cutter breaks through the wall of the tubing. This one has a tool attached to it also to help clean up the burr on that edge of the pipe. I roughed up the surface of all the copper pieces and peeled off the labels. Here's what I'll be using to put all this together. A cap, a short piece of pipe, a coupling, and the air chamber. This is 1/2-inch pipe I'm working with here. And here's how it's all going to go together. The Sharpie fits in the air chamber, the small piece of pipe becomes the cap, the coupling holds the two pieces together with a slip fit, and then the copper cap seals off the end. Now it's time to solder the pieces of pipe together. I've never done this before, but I'm using some flux, and then I heat up the pipe evenly with my propane torch set pretty low here. When it's hot enough, the joint will just suck in the solder. Then I repeated the process with the coupling, some flux, some heat, and some solder, and it's all joined together pretty well. My solder joints were ugly and messy, so I cleaned them up with a file and some sandpaper to get them looking a little better. Then I took a copper roofing nail and cut off the head. I started to do this with a file, then just chucked the nail up in my drill and it went much faster. I also softened the sharp edges of that nail with the file. I hammered a flat spot into the nail so it would make better contact when I soldered it together. I used a clamp to hold the nail and the cap in place and then hit it with the heat. This part's pretty interesting. I mixed up some salt and vinegar to make a patina solution. I wanted the copper to look aged and funky, so I made up enough to cover it, then sat it in that solution for about an hour, then pulled it out and let it dry. I actually repeated this process a second time off camera after putting some heat on the big piece of copper. It didn't really tarnish up that much the first time, so I gave it another go round. After it was completely dry, I clear coated both pieces to make sure the patina doesn't come off as I'm handling it. You can see it's got a pretty good looking patina on it. I scuffed up the body and the cap of the Sharpie because I wanted the epoxy to really stick to it when I joined everything together. I'm using some 5-minute epoxy here. I clamped the air chamber upright, put some epoxy in the tube, and then slathered some on the outside of the Sharpie. What I should have done is taped off the piece of pipe to keep the squeeze out from making a mess. I learned my lesson here and did a much better job with the cap part of the Sharpie, taping it off first. And this was a little easier too because the Sharpie cap actually could go all the way down inside the copper cap piece, so I didn't have to worry about it sliding in too deep and messing things up. With everything dried, cleaned up, and put together, it's ready to go. This was a cool project to do. It was something that kind of popped into my head just because of the No Lathe Pin Challenge that Bill Levolsi put out to people on YouTube to try to challenge them to make a pin without turning anything on a lathe. So I did that by using something that was already round. You don't need to have a lathe if you're working with round stock already. You could probably recreate this project without using a torch and soldering it together. You could do a lot of it with just some super glue, although I don't think the little pin cap part would really stick on there all that well without soldering it into place. The patina solution, I just looked online and found something that you could come up with a solution at home to patina copper, and I think it turned out pretty well. I'll probably be doing that again if I ever need to come up with another piece of aged copper. If this is your first time here, take the time to subscribe. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Tell me how you would do things differently, or what kinds of things that this has inspired you to do. I think that's really the most important thing we can do, is we all kind of share our ideas and creativity, because I think the most important thing we make as makers is more makers. Thanks for watching.